Hello and welcome back to the Eyes of Ode gaming channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today I have another older game in my What Is It and Is It Worth It game review series. In this video I will go through the various aspects of the game, trying my best to avoid spoilers for new players, and give examples of similar games as well as my personal opinion as to whether I would recommend the game with a thumbs up or thumbs down, and if I personally enjoyed it. I won't be giving a number rating to the game as many other channels do, as I find this to be a very arbitrary way of rating games, which like any other entertainment is completely subjective, and instead I prefer to give enough info for you to make a decision on your own if you would like to go forward with picking up this title for yourself. Today we take a look at Hellblade Senua Sacrifice. This game is one of the newer games I have reviewed, coming out in 2017, so only 3 years old by the time I have recorded this. The game is a hack and slash puzzle solving game and was developed and published by Ninja Theory. So let's take a look at this one and see what exactly this game is all about and if it is still worth picking up for you as a first time player. So right from the start I am going to come out and say that Hellblade is not a typical game. I tend to avoid playing audio from games in my reviews to avoid copyright issues. However, I do want to say that the audio is very important in this game. Also, being that most of the game is a puzzle solver, I won't be showing a ton of gameplay to avoid spoilers. So in essence, it is a puzzle solving game with a high degree of story-driven narrative. This is not going to follow the typical mold that many newer releases have, as there's no choices to make. You just push through the game, solving the puzzles and listening to the story as it unfolds. What makes this game atypical, as I mentioned previously, are some of the mechanics involved. The game follows the story of Senua, a Pictish warrior, as she enters into the realm of Norse mythology to save the soul of her dead lover. As you play through the game, you will come across runestones, which will tell you many of the stories from Norse mythology as you progress. One thing that I personally really liked about all this is that although many of the depictions of the gods or mythology is complete fantasy made by the game, the stories and legends which are told follow the historical myths very accurately. As some of you may know, the name of my channel is influenced by Norse mythology and I've studied it quite a bit, so it was really quite refreshing to play a game which tells the myths so faithfully. That being said, Senua is depicted in the game as being at odds with the gods of the Norse religion, as her people had been victims of Norseman raids. According to the developers, they worked very closely with neuroscientists and mental health specialists. This comes through very strongly in the narrative, as the entire game centers around the protagonist's battle with Psychosis, which is understood by Senua and others in-game to be a curse which she is burdened with. As mentioned before, audio is very important to the game. There are a number of visual and auditory hallucinations which you experience as Senua during your playthrough. It is highly recommended to play this game with headphones on. I played with headphones through the entire game, though I did go back and see what it was like without, and much of the power in the audio is lost when using standard speakers. The puzzles themselves are quite unique from other puzzle solving games I have tried. At first I found them to be quite difficult, however once I learned the style which they are built on, I found that figuring them out was actually quite simple. The game doesn't really explain to you how to solve them, so you may find yourself struggling at first. I felt this was actually a positive aspect of the game, as it adds to the challenge, which is why I'm not showing any of the puzzles in the review. Aside from the puzzles, there is combat in the game. As well as the puzzles, the combat can seem tricky at first, though once you figure out how it works, the difficulty really drops off. I found my first couple of fights were a bit of a challenge as I didn't know what I was doing, but once I got a bit of experience, the combat was a breeze to deal with. Mainly it involves correct timing with dodging and parrying, and once you get a handle on that, it's really quite simple. The nice part here being that the controls are all quite smooth and intuitive, without any clunky feeling while playing. The graphics are actually quite nice, and they have a rather unique feel in some parts of the game. The environments look interesting and the NPCs are done well, though the enemies will feel extremely repetitive after a short time. I felt that one of the biggest critiques with the game would be the length. It is really quite a short experience and can be completed in a relatively short amount of time, although this is not unusual for some heavily story-driven games. The story itself is actually quite interesting and should keep you focused on the game. It was one of the few lately I found that there is more emphasis on the story than the gameplay itself. The gameplay isn't bad, but it does feel slightly underdeveloped in some aspects. especially the combat, which serves more just to break up the puzzle solving sequences rather than serving as a real challenge for the player. So what games would I compare this to? Well, for me that is a difficult question, as I haven't played many like it. It is possible to draw a comparison to games like The Last of Us in terms of story, however the gameplay does not feel very similar. I did get a slight Rise Son of Rome vibe in terms of progressing through the zones, which are broken up by combat sequences. I felt the combat in Senua was more realistic than Rise, although Rise is more combat focused and quote-unquote fun in a gameplay perspective. Would I recommend Hellblade?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe. It depends on how open-minded in games you are. If you enjoy puzzle solvers, you could get a lot out of this game. It's definitely more of a casual gaming experience rather than a hardcore gaming one. If you play games more for the story and don't mind a slower pace, this could be a great one for you. As I said, I don't have much experience with games like this, however I did find myself eager to progress through the game and enjoyed it from start to finish. That being said, I also recognize this is not a typical game, and so I'm not sure if it will appeal to all gamers. I hope you enjoyed this look at the game Hellblade Senua Sacrifice. If you did, or if it helped you make a decision if you're going to pick this one up, please throw me a like on here. Also consider subscribing to the channel. I upload a variety of gaming content regularly with reviews, walkthroughs, let's play and more, and would love to have you join the community and give your suggestions on what you would like to see in the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching today, and until next time, take care.